Hello everyone, and thank you once again for joining us for this Saturday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Dave Percy. On the hazardous weather graphic, we've got winter weather advisory out for tonight here for the St. Lawrence Island area to the Bering Strait coast. Snow, blowing snow, reduced visibilities, and snowfall amounts of maybe 2 to 4 inches. Some areas maybe a little bit more with that throughout the night tonight. And then 6 a.m. tomorrow, winter storm warnings break out here for the north side of the Seward Peninsula there, Shishmaref and other areas, and also here along eastern Norton Sound. And up here, this one up here for Ambler for the Kobuk Valley, Noatak, Kobuk, and Selawik valleys, including the greater Kotzebue area. This one comes into effect tomorrow morning, and that's for anywhere from 3 to 6 inches of snow, again with winds reducing visibility to less than half a mile at times. So these areas here are winter storm watches for tomorrow. And then over here we have the winter weather advisory continuing. We'll be ending from west to east, and we'll probably stay out until morning here, or early Sunday morning for the eastern areas there. So slowly and snowy conditions expected to continue throughout the night tonight, again ending from west to east. Moving on to satellite imagery, here's the big area of cloudiness that brought the snow, quite a widespread area of snow here from Kodiak Island up across areas of south central Alaska, right on up into the eastern interior and into the Yukon Flats, all shifting eastward and missing the southeast coast. Staying to the north, looks like a little bit of high stuff getting into the northern areas, but that's about it. Otherwise, mostly clear skies all the way down to the Queen Charlotte Islands. Bristol Bay in the break there, high pressure in advance of this system, following this system, making for a pretty good day, at least an afternoon here, Alaska Peninsula Sandpoint up to, again, looks like right along the southwest coast. And then moisture and gusty winds with this system pushing eastward will continue to do so, with the front coming inland later on tomorrow, and that's going to result in the winter weather advisories for tonight for St. Lawrence Island, the Bering Strait coast, and then the winter storm watch, all due to this system back out to the west. And rolling that through, you can see the break right behind the front there, and then southwest flow, numerous rain and snow showers, just flat out rain, gusty winds 30 to 50 miles an hour out there at Shimia, and gale warnings out in that area through tonight. Gale warnings have ended here for the Alaska Peninsula, seeing wind gusts 50 miles an hour out of the north this morning. Those actually down to small craft advisories from the marine areas now, and continue will be even lighter this evening with the ridge axis moving through ahead of that next system. Then swing around to the southeast and increase again. For today, here's the location of that front there, bringing moisture up to the Pribilof Islands. A warming trend here, so snow changing over to mixed rain and snow, and then to rain, especially down here to the south, in toward Nikolsky, Adak, and Atka, and then showers with clearing, and then more widespread showers, lower snowfall levels, rain and snow showers, Shimia and Attu, gusty winds, and areas of light snow up here over the west and northwest, kind of scattered and intermittent from the Yukon Delta, becoming a little more widespread for the Seward Peninsula, and really not all that heavy up here along the west coast there. Areas of light snow, winds not all that strong, so no blowing snow. And this area here is mostly lifted northward off the Arctic coast. There are a few flurries lingering around Kaktovik, but for the most part it's ended for the central and east side. And then this area of snow pushing up into the eastern interior there, with snowfall from about roughly 10 or so eastward there to the border, and extending back down along this trough across the Sitna Valley, Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula. It's steady snow falling much of the morning into the afternoon for Kodiak Island. It should start becoming more showery this evening. Otherwise, clear skies for the Panhandle. Forecast for tonight, no change over the southeast coast, about the same. Winds not all that bad. Still maybe some channeled gap gusty winds along the border there, but definitely lighter for places like Lynn Canal and the North Gulf Coast here, with again this moisture pushing into western Canada or the Yukon, Northwest Territories. So snowfall rates diminishing, becoming more intermittent, and showers of snow scattering out here, south central Alaska, Susitna Valley, Madanuska Valley, Palmer areas, and the Kenai Peninsula becoming quite light and scattered, if not ending completely by Sunday morning as high pressure builds into the central interior at about 1,034 millibars. Areas of clearing with that. Pretty widespread there for the southern Kuskokwim Valley, Bristol Bay, even into Kodiak Island with that more north-northwesterly flow. And staying pretty cloudy here on the western side of that ridge with light snow showers or flurries through this area, cloudy skies, and the next storm bringing the snow and blowing snow in again, pushing eastward here to the coastline, St. Lawrence Island, Seward Peninsula. That moves inland, results in those winter storm watches that are over the Kobuk, Koyukuk Valley areas, or I'm sorry, not the Koyukuk, the Kobuk and Selawik valleys, as well as Kotzebue Sound up across the Noatak Valley, and could see winds gusting in advance of the front as high as 50 miles an hour, maybe 25 to 40 here along the Yukon Delta, mixed rain and snow over the Kuskokwim Delta, down to the Alaska Peninsula. Outlook for Monday, that front pushes eastward, really weakens, but still a band of a narrowing band of light snow pushes again across the Tanana Valley and drags across south central Alaska probably late tomorrow night, early Monday morning, breaking out again to maybe some clearing in the afternoon, scattered snow showers back to the west. Next system pushing into the Bering Sea, bringing rain and snow to the Aleutians, on up to the Pribilof Islands, again with another round of wind and westerlies, maybe gusting 30 to 50 miles an hour out to the west, just south of that low center. Temperatures lows for tonight, anywhere from 5 to 15 below over the eastern interior, a little above zero for the Arctic coast, and teens there for the inland areas of the west and southwest part of the state, to lower 30s here over the Bering Sea, upper 30s for the Aleutians. Another chilly night here for the southeast coast, anywhere lows, depending on your wind, anywhere from 5 above to maybe near 20 above here, mid-20s all along the coast. And for the highs Sunday afternoon, mostly in the single numbers up there over the northeast interior, 20s, Tanana Valley, all the way back to lower 30s in the southwest, lower 40s for the Aleutians, and mostly in the 30s there for the Panhandle. Lows the next morning, about the same here, except looks like a little bit milder maybe. Could see some clouds showing up down to the south there, so mid-20s. Otherwise, low below zero, 10 to 20 below in the coldest areas here over the eastern interior. Warmer in the west, upper to mid-20s along the west coast to St. Lawrence Island. And then the highs shaping up like this, teens in the east to 30s in the west, with lower 40s again over the Aleutians. Unalaska forecast 45.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving into flying weather now. The first graphic here tomorrow morning, lots of IFR from the Bering Sea streaming northeastward here and then flowing inland early on tomorrow morning, with IFR back down along and west of the Alaska Range. And some IFR here, looks like right over the Kenai Peninsula, but becoming VFR. Cook Inlet on up into the Manitoussit Valley into the Copper River Basin. Good VFR continues over the Panhandle, and some IFR there, central eastern Arctic coast, actually just sort of grazing the coastline in areas. And for the afternoon on Sunday, VFR breaks out up there from the Brooks Range on out to the central and eastern coastline, but marginal VFR clinging to the west side, and then IFR on the southern slopes of the central and western Brooks Range. And then big area IFR continues out here from the Seward Peninsula, Bering Strait southward, including St. Lawrence Island, on down, getting kind of narrow down through here as it gets down toward the Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutians. Good VFR here out to the west with high pressure building in toward the Pribilofs. VFR South Central Alaska, really nice day tomorrow afternoon here flying-wise for the southeast southern interior on down toward Dixon Entrance. And then for Monday morning, another batch of IFR rolling right on in. Pretty massive area here, right up to looks like almost the west shore of Cook Inlet there, and into the western Susitna Valley, northward there through the central interior, on up to the across the Yukon Flats. Staying VFR, at least to start with, there for the North Slope and the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. And then some better conditions there over the central Bering Sea. Next front pushing IFR into the western Aleutians, which by the afternoon, Monday afternoon, pushes eastward, makes a pretty good jog eastward here, spreading all the way to just about Falls Pass there, and just reaching the Pribilofs. IFR persists here along the west coast and inland, Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, right up into the northwest valleys there, and along and south of the Brooks Range. Into the eastern interior, marginal to IFR conditions right on down across the Copper River Basin to the North Gulf Coast. VFR holds over southeast Alaska. And then for passes Anatuvik and Anakin, both marginal VFR tomorrow. Lake Clark and Merrill, VFR, as well as rainy. Opposite of today there, windy, also VFR from start to finish. And Isabel looking good, wide open. Well, actually, Mentasta starting out marginal VFR, becoming VFR late in the morning and through the afternoon. Tenita, though, VFR all day long for Portage. And Chilkoot and White, another day, at least probably 2 more days, where it will be VFR for those passes. And for the freezing levels, 2,000 feet here, nudging northward on some southerly winds there, north of the Pribilofs, and at the surface, back up towards St. Matthew Island, 4,000 feet up across the Fox Islands there in Akulskian, Alaska, Dutch Harbor. And at the surface, right along the coastline again, on down on the outer coastline of the Panhandle. Looks like some warmer air building down to the south. And as far as icing goes, none over the interior. That batch coming through today pushes off into Canada right there. Otherwise, no icing for the Panhandle, Gulf of Alaska. Then with this front, icing coming in, mostly of the light to isolated moderate rime type here from the Chukchi Sea south, coming inland deltas down to the Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutians. And then the next batch is still way out there toward the Komodorskis. Looking at the jet stream here, 33,000 foot winds, strong southwest flow here. Relatively strong southwest flow or west-southwest flow here coming into the Bering Sea. Ridging coming in following the trough, kicking out later tonight and tomorrow into northwest Canada. So make for a nicer day, drier anyway, with more clearing. And ridging even up into the Alaska Peninsula there. But that's going to move through. Anyway, for 9,000 feet, we've got good flow across the Bering here, southwest-southwest, 42 as high as 55 knots. Falling back to much lighter under the ridge axis as it moves inland, 10 to 15, maybe 20 knots over the interior, and 15 to 20 there across the Panhandle. And for 3,000 feet, northerlies 10 to 15, Gulf of Alaska, southeast coast. Pretty light winds here through the ridge, picking up south to southwest, 25 to 35 knots coming inland a little bit there. And then 25 to 35 knot winds covering much of the Bering Sea and the Aleutians. So moving on to turbulence. Areas of moderate chop out here, mainly the western Aleutians and maybe around Atka. Otherwise light to isolated moderate chop below about 4,000 feet there. Some isolated turbulence possible for the Alaska Peninsula. And then with those southerly winds up here, look for occasional moderate chop there, Seward Peninsula, northwest coast. And after the break, I'll be back with the marine forecasts.
In Valdez, all the waves were locally generated. Tremendous land movement during the quake initially caused the water to literally stand up and collapse into town. Then, 93 million cubic yards of glacial deposits under the dock area slumped and generated a 30 to 40 foot wave. Freddie Christopherson, then 13, described what he saw.
Dehne and I went down on the dock to see the boat and load, and then we were leaving. Earthquake started, and then Dehne and I ran. I looked back and I saw the boat go up, then it took off, and then I saw the dock go up, and then we kept running up to Stiff's Motors. I got a ride with some guy in a pan. We went out to 6 Mile Hill. Then we waited for a while. Then we went back in.
4 decades later, that memory remains burned into Fred Christopherson's soul.
It was the biggest, blackest wave that I'd ever seen. I was turning around watching it with my little buddy hollering at me up the road here, "Run, run, don't look, run."
I looked back and I saw the ship. It was about 30 feet out of the water, and the stern was in the air, and the bow was pointing right down into the water, and I could see the prop slowly turning and water coming off of it.
Great big crevasse opened up, and I didn't know if I was going to make it.
The longshoremen and the visitors that were on the dock running this way, trying to get to the shore, and it broke away from the shore, and they ran this way to go to the boat to look for some protection, and there just wasn't any protection. They just, finally the dock all busted up and they all disappeared, never to be seen again.
They were gone in just a moment.
I just couldn't imagine the people that were on the dock and the last minutes of their lives and how they must have suffered knowing what was going to happen.
A short time later, at the far end of Port Valdez, the Chute Bay glacial moraine above and below the waterline avalanched and collapsed into the bay. It generated a 220-foot wave. It was the tallest wave recorded anywhere during the '64 quake. Delbert Ferrier and his father were in a skiff a short distance away when the monster passed by.
That's when I saw it wipe out, take all the concrete off the light, wipe that out, and go over the top of that little island and go in front of us, and it was starting to break on top. So, but we were just getting the big rollers. We were going up and down, you know, not knowing what the hell was going to happen. And that just missed us. We got more of the roller part. Had we been back there, well, you know, it'd been gone.
By the time this wave reached Valdez, it was still 40 feet high, but it did the greatest damage to the town. In the years following the disaster, Valdez was rebuilt on more solid ground about 3 miles away. Tsunamis are created by the sudden displacement of water, usually caused by very powerful earthquakes that violently change the elevation of the seafloor. Tsunamis also can be caused by above or underwater landslides, which are often generated by earthquakes. Though far less likely, tsunamis may also be caused by the eruption of submarine volcanoes, meteor impacts, or nuclear explosions. When a tsunami is generated in the open ocean, the water is so deep that the wave is barely detectable, maybe no more than a foot high at the surface. But it can travel across the ocean at jetliner speeds of 500 to 600 miles per hour. As that same wave reaches shallower water, it will slow down to about 1/10 of the speed and may grow more than 10 times in height. If the lower part of the wave reaches shore first, the incoming surge may actually be preceded by water flowing out to sea, exposing the ocean bottom or emptying channels and even huge bays. Most think that a tsunami appears as an enormous cresting wave, but in fact, most tsunamis come in as a fast-moving surge of water, like a monster high tide in fast motion. In addition to the 1964 tsunamis, 2 other tsunami events in Alaska stand out. In 1958, the highest tsunami recorded in modern history occurred in Lituya Bay in southeast Alaska. An earthquake dislodged a huge chunk of a mountain, which crashed into the bay. The impact created a wave that splashed 1,700 feet up a mountainside, completely denuding a slope of all trees and soil. One fisherman was killed when the wave swept his boat out to sea. In 1946, a strong earthquake in the Aleutian Islands that probably generated an underwater landslide created a huge tsunami that wiped out the Scotch-capped lighthouse perched 40 feet above sea level. 5 people were killed. This same wave traveled silently and undetected across the Pacific Ocean to the Hawaiian Islands, where it killed another 159 unsuspecting people. It was this disaster that led to the formation of the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center.
The U.S. National Tsunami Hazard Mitigation Program is the educational program in which communities are advised that they in fact live in an area in which tsunamis might be expected sometime in the future to attack, and to educate the population that, in fact, there may not be much warning time.
And this particular program is a partnership between three agencies, U.S. Geological Survey, seismologist expertise, NOAA, which is oceanographic expertise, and FEMA, which is mitigation expertise. So those are the three partners that are working on the federal side. On the state side is the 5 states affected. That's Alaska and Hawaii, Washington, Oregon, and California.
Here at UAF, at the Geophysical Institute, we are involved in 3 of the aspects of this national program. Those consist of warning, risk assessment, and risk mitigation. The warning aspect that we participate in, it uses seismology.
At the Geophysical Institute, scientists monitor earthquake data from several hundred seismic sensing stations across Alaska. When a seismic disturbance occurs, this data is instantly transmitted to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's West Coast and Alaska Tsunami Warning Center in Palmer, Alaska. Scientists on 24-hour call quickly analyze that data, along with data from their own network of sensors, and decide whether or not they should issue a tsunami warning.
When we see a large earthquake has occurred and it's occurred near the coast, we'll issue a warning to those who could be affected by the wave within a certain amount of time. And then we'll monitor the wave to see if it really was dangerous or not, and if it was dangerous, then we'll expand the warning to all the people that it may be dangerous for.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Today's sea ice analysis. Not much different from yesterday, but with the southerly winds that will be coming in, look over the next 4 or 5 days for the ice to melt back and retreat back northward and back to the east here, especially from St. Lawrence to Nunivak Island. So right in through this area should see the greatest melt back here over the next, again, 4 or 5 days. Coastal water forecast here for the southeast coast. Looks like northwesterlies 10 to 15 knots here. Lightest on the south coast, sea 7 to 8 feet. East 20 up on the north end, and then northern Link Canal still carrying a small current advisory for those north winds at 25, but just 15 knots for Stevens Passage. Light to just about variable for Clarence Strait at 10 knots, 2-foot seas. And then those turn a little bit more northeasterly the next day, but stay light. And we've got light variable winds here along the central and south coast, becoming more east-southeasterly at about 15 on the north coast. And those northerly winds pick back up again there in northern Link Canal with gusts of 40 knots, about 20 knots for Stevens Passage. And for Prince William Sound tomorrow, northwest at 20 with 3-foot seas. Northerlies 20 knots for the North Gulf Coast, northwest 25. Barren Islands back up into Kachemak Bay there, seas at about 7 feet. And Cook Inlet northerlies 10 to 15, a little stronger there south of the Forelands. And for Monday, shaping up like this is light northerlies for Cook Inlet at 10 knots. Small craft advisories continue for both Kachemak Bay down across the Barren Islands. And lighter winds here now for the North Gulf Coast, 10 to 15 knots out of the north. Light northerlies for Prince William Sound, seas coming down to 2 feet. And then for Kodiak Island, northwest coming down to 20 knots tomorrow there on the east side of the island, just west 15, Shelikof Strait. And then Sitkinak to Castle Cape, really light winds here, just northwest at 10, becoming variable. And then southwest 20, south side of the peninsula, north side, south 25 with 9-foot seas and 15 knots for Bristol Bay. Those turn westerly, 20 knots here. Westerlies 15 to 20, Bristol Bay on down the coastline here. Castle Cape to, Cape Saratchev to Castle Cape, northwest 15, turn west 20 on up towards Sitkinak. West-northwest at 20, blowing across Kodiak Island. And out to the Aleutians, got gales out for the western Aleutians tomorrow there with even lighter winds, though, as you get east of Kiska Island with 20-knot winds, and then kind of a 15 to 25-knot west-southwest wind pattern here with the strongest winds south of Adak and Atka, and then southwest, south to southwest, 25 or 20 to 25 knots there across the Fox Islands. Seas maybe as high as 14 feet. And then on Monday, those southerlies, 15 to 25, strongest north of Unalaska Island, increased to 25 to 30 knots here, and then just sustained 30 knots for Atka from the south-southwest. Seas gradually building as well for Adak and Atka, and then full gales with 20-foot seas turn into storms. Storm warnings out for the western Aleutians, seas up to 30 feet. And for the southwest coast, south to southwest winds 25 knots with 8-foot seas, 20 knots for the Pribilofs. St. Matthew Island, southwest 20 knots with those seas 18 feet. And southerlies at 25, brisk wind advisories for Norton Sound, St. Lawrence Island, and the Bering Strait. And then those brisk wind advisories continue here for St. Lawrence Island on Monday, southwest 25, right on down to Nunivak Island, southwest 20 there, south of the island, on into Kuskokwim Bay. And then gales come back into the Pribilofs and St. Matthew Island area, coming up to 35 knots with seas building 13 to 19 feet. And up along the eastern Beaufort Sea coast tomorrow, west 15 to 20 with 15-knot westerlies all the way back to the central coast, and then on down, say, southwest of Wainwright, Point Lay, southeast at 15, pick up to brisk wind advisory levels there from Cape Beaufort all the way down to Wales, where there will be about 30 knots. And then for the Monday outlook, southwest 15 to 20 here through these areas. So coming down, south 15, western and central coast, and then pretty darn light there on the east sides, right out of the south or southeast at only 10 knots. And for tonight, I got that trough continues to push eastward here. It's already mostly off the eastern Arctic coast there with some leftover flurries falling in behind. Snow persists much of the night with a winter weather advisory over the eastern interior, ending from west to east, becoming more showery and lighter, ending for Cook Inlet, and just some evening scattered snow showers down over the Kenai Peninsula. High pressure building in, clearing skies, drier conditions. Next front bringing wind and snow into the west coast, pushes eastward on Monday.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.